go. Hello, everybody. You're listening to episode 293 of the Act Percussion podcast. I am your host, Ksenija Komljenović, and with me are my lovely, lovely co-hosts, the man, the myth, the legend, Casey Cangelosi.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, going well. How are you, Casey?
Good, thanks.
Good. Getting ready for the new school year?
Yeah, feeling ready. And this what's called the Stanton Music Festival here is gearing up. So, yep, I actually was moving equipment just today, and we'll be moving some equipment tomorrow, loading a truck, doing all that. So it's it feels like I'm getting a head start because
Are you playing?
Yep, I'll be playing, and I'll also be putting some ensembles together that we'll use for the school semester. We can't always do that, but we'll get to do that this semester. So that's cool. It feels like we're getting ahead, a month in advance. It's kind of nice.
What are you playing? Any highlights?
Yeah, new Eric Genovan percussion quartet called Celestial Cannons. That's going to be exciting.
Cool.
So I'll share when I get a chance.
That sounds promising. Celestial Cannons.
I
Kudos
know,
for
right?
the title, at least. And then we have the legend, the myth, the man, Ben Charles.
Hey, Ksenija, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing well. Just also getting ready to go back to school here.
Yeah, we all are. We're gearing up. Everybody, I just want to say, 6 years later, the podcast has decided to take a tiny break, and we're now back in season 2. I think we've beat Oprah and whoever else has had these long running seasons where we're up there, But anyway, if you find that this podcast serves you, we'd love to invite you to become a supporter on Patreon. The link is in the description box. We created the participation levels so that they are quite affordable and they fit you. You could jump in and give as little as $3, which is amazing. This helps us cover the costs of the podcast. And a huge shout out to our Patreon circle that we have already. You help make this run, and you make this a possibility, and you bring great ideas and conversations to the table. So please check that out if you're willing to help us out. All right, so this episode is going to be released on August 19th, and a couple of things happen on that day. One is in 1990, Bernstein had his final concert at Tanglewood with the Boston Symphony Orchestra. He performed Britten's 4C interludes and Beethoven's 7th Symphony. And I don't know if you folks know this. I'll just quiz because Ben does that all the time because he remembers everything. But now I've actually read this and wrote it down, so I know the answer. But do you know what Bernstein was buried with? What score?
Mahler.
If I had to guess, I would guess Beethoven, but
I mean, yeah, that's a smart. Good guess, Ben. Casey was right. Mahler. What Mahler, Casey?
I mean, I guess it would be Mahler. Isn't there one called Resurrection Symphony?
Mahler 5.
Is that number 5?
No.
Okay.
But he was buried with Mahler 5. So good job. You win, almost for $10 million. He was buried with it next to his wife, and a copy of the 5th Symphony open to the famous Adagietto lying across his heart. So how about that? That's something to think about. If you could choose to be buried with a piece of music, what would that be?
White Knuckle Stroll.
Yeah, right. I mean,
that's very me.
I want my fists around the mallets, just like this.
Yeah, they need to inject your body with something so you're just like all tight and mad around it. Yeah, that's a real good idea. That's so fitting for Bernstein. And I actually didn't know that it was literally just a guess, but I thought like he championed Mahler so much. And I mean, there aren't a ton of like Mahlers the way Bernstein. I mean, Bernstein is kind of another Mahler, like conductor, composer, like heavy duty conductor, composer. So I don't know, that's it. What kind of came to mind.
Yep. You're right. You're smart. No DMA, but still very, very smart.
Lucky guess.
Lucky guess. And our second story that happened on this day was that if you're into pop music, which I am, Lou Pearlman, the former producer of NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, died in prison while serving a 25-year sentence for a Ponzi scheme and bank fraud and all that. It's a very interesting story that I won't bother you with, but if you have nothing better to do, you can go to YouTube and check out the free documentary, The Boy Band Con, the Lou Pearlman story. Basically, he started his business in aviation and then realized that since he had like charter fancy luxury planes to lend out to people, and then he saw New Kids on the Block renting one. He was like, how did these 20-year-old boys do this? How can they afford this? And then he said, oh, I'm in the wrong business. I should be a producer for boy bands. And he got these kids to stardom and then, of course, robbed them of a lot of money. And it's really interesting to see. So
how many times have you seen NSYNC live, Ksenija?
Sadly never, but I did see Justin Timberlake live, and that was
okay. There we go. I knew there'd be something there. What about you, Ben? How many times? I'm sure you've seen him at least twice.
That's going to be a 0 for me also.
Oh, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You all are trying to act academic, I think.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, I like Mahler more than Backstreet Boys.
I've seen Mahler in concert several times.
What if the answer, like, what score was Bernstein buried with? And it was like something NSYNC.
Bye by NSYNC.
Bye. Yeah. Toxic by Backstreet Boys.
There you go. Don't take us too seriously, but it is an interesting thing to check out. See how influential, wealthy people can change the course of music. It's really interesting.
I did a quick little shallow dive on this, and he defrauded investors out of more than $1 billion, out of which $300 million is still missing. That's like crazy.
Yeah, he was quite the manipulator. Yeah, it's an interesting story. Definitely worth checking out. All right, so now that was history for you. We get to move on to our guest, who's going to chat with us about working in film. And of our guest, the famous Hans Zimmer said, she's such a phenomenal musician, embracing the traditions and revolutionizing our future. I'll never write another piece for percussion without having her add her creative grace and fire to it. I mean, talk about something that you can put in your CV and like etch into your car and not be ashamed of it. Our guest grew up in a musical family and started off learning the violin at the age of 5 in Serbia. So she's my homegirl. I'm very excited about this. This is a first on the podcast for me. She then moved to Slovenia and picked up percussion at 11, which she continued studying then at the Music and Arts University of the city of Vienna in Austria. All of this with Nebojša Jovanživković. In the meantime, she won many, many prizes at national and international competitions across Europe. So Spain, Croatia, Slovenia, Bulgaria, Austria, you name it. She was recognized by the Federal Chancellery of Austria as one of the most outstanding young artists living in Vienna and was consequently awarded with their scholarship in 2016 and 17. And now she leads a diverse musical life, from participating in recordings for Hollywood productions, including for such companies as Netflix, Disney, and Warner Brothers, to performing solo recitals, which she, as I heard, recently had at Nomus, a wonderful festival in Novi Sad, playing with orchestras and ensembles, the whole 9 yards. So everybody, please welcome the wonderful Aleksandra Šuklar to the show.
Hello.
Hi. So nice
introduction. I mean.
Hey, you're stellar. We compressed it, but I think the Hans Zimmer thing could have just gone on its own. Nobody needs you to say anything else if you said that about you.
But thank you.
So what's up, Aleksandra? Where are you? Where are you calling from? What have you been doing recently?
Well, I've been in Vienna. I mean, I am now in Vienna, and I had very 2 busy days because I had to finish the recording for an upcoming Netflix movie, but I cannot share what is it about.
Sure.
And I've also had some video shooting for an event that it's taking place in September in Linz, also including a regisseur, Robert Dornhelm. And so it has been also exciting to be in a bit different role. I mean, playing, but in front of the camera and just being guided what to do.
That's cool. That's cool. Awesome. So we really want to hear all about your involvement with film. So why don't you tell us how you got involved with it in the first place?
During my studies, there has been an orchestra established in Vienna called Synchron Stage Orchestra, which role is mainly to record for film productions, music for film productions. So this is actually orchestra based of session musicians, which means that this is not some kind of steady job or anything like that, but you're just being asked a couple of days in advance if you have time to jump in and simply to record this film music. And that was very exciting for me. And And anyhow, working in these different recordings, afterwards I got asked to participate in the project, which is called World of Hans Zimmer. So yeah, and the World of Hans Zimmer is show curated by Hans Zimmer himself. So I'm a band member in that show. Afterwards, Hans Zimmer asked me to be a band member in his show where he is performing live as well, which is called Hans Zimmer Live. And then after that, step by step, I started also recording for film music productions from my studio. So that's long story short.
I know so many students, like young musicians, they get into classical music through film music. You know, it's probably like the easiest, quickest way we hear it today. And I guess I'm just kind of wondering, like while we're hearing how you got into it, how would you recommend people, like, you know, who do they need to be bumping shoulders with to, you know, connect to the film classical world?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but I really don't have a magical recipe for that. So with me, it really somehow happened by chance. And I was, of course, very open towards it, that I really enjoyed it and I really wanted to be part of it. And with me, mostly it worked by recommendation. So I guess the skills that I was delivering at certain spots that were not in the first stage connected to the film music itself, but somehow I had to prove myself on different gigs, different occasions, to simply get into the circle like that. I mean, it could have been anything else, of course. So what I can recommend maybe students in the first case, of course, besides your amazing skills, I mean, like practicing and studying and, you know, hours spent in basements, I really recommend that you should be reliable. Like, I think that's the one very, very important thing. Why would people maybe come back to you and call you for different occasions? So with me, it really worked that I entered this orchestra, synchron stage orchestra, also a bit by chance. It was just newly founded that they needed percussionists. So there I started. I was really enjoying it, but the thing is with those kind of orchestras, you really have to be a good sight reader, because most of the literature that you get is being delivered at the spot. I mean, if you're lucky, you get it maybe a day or two in advance, but that's definitely something that counts. So, and that it's very important. So yeah, after that, I got recommended to the World of Hans Zimmer because of the skills that I have shown already at the film music sessions. So that's somehow my part of the story, getting into it.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think when, you know, we were preparing for this podcast, I had a separate conversation with Aleksandra about the same thing. And I told her how I really appreciated how quick to respond she was to everything. I mean, it's just like I sent her a message, ping, she messages back immediately. And it's just a person who is really, really responsive, very professional. And yet also, even through text, I could see how positive of a person you are, how you're a problem solver. You're like, okay, this hour doesn't work. How about we try this hour? Okay, girl, all is good. So I think people really want to work with those people, especially when you have such short, like quick turnarounds where something has to be done really quickly. You want someone who's not a Debbie Downer. You want someone who's going to actually pick up the phone and respond to you in case something goes wrong with the session or whatever, you know, may happen. So I think Aleksandra is definitely that kind of person that's just so jolly to be there and is a badass player. So you combine the two and you want to go on tour with her for 2 months and play this awesome music all the time. So that's definitely something that I think helps.
Well, I mean, I'm not always responsive, of course, when it's about professional things I am, but I mean, I have to have some you know, airbags where I'm just like leaving the phone on the side and not checking it or not going on social media or stuff like that.
Of course, all in good taste. I was just going to mention, if this question were to come from, especially someone from, say, if it was a kid from Serbia, like I was, or like we were, you might think that you can't get into Hollywood because you live in this remote area, because you're not in LA. And sure, that might be a little bit more difficult, but guess what? Actually, Hollywood does outsource a lot of its recording to, say, Eastern European, smaller, cheaper orchestras, just to be able to do this, quicker, cheaper, so on. It's more affordable. So if you don't know where to go, just find out whether in your city or maybe in the capital city of your country, there is an ensemble. And then you look up who's the member of, who are the members of that ensemble, and then go talk to them, because that might happen to you. I had a very similar experience to Aleksandra's when I was in the Belgrade Philharmonic, that they saw my sight reading skills and my responsibility skills, and then invited me for some productions where we had the composer on Skype, and we had these remote sessions with Hollywood too. So, don't give up. Doesn't matter if you're in LA. It's great if you are, obviously. But if you're not, there's still always room, and you're always auditioning, right? It's like every gig is your audition for the next gig. So just keep on top of that.
One thing also about living in LA, like one downside to it, is you have to live in LA.
Just so horrible. I mean, the weather, awful.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, some people say it's really terrible.
Well, it's a lot more competition, so it's not all roses, and it's not all amazing everywhere.
But I mean, you hear these stories like, the UCLA, like faculty, like the professors, like they have like 6 roommates and they live an hour commute. And like, I mean, you just hear that stuff like all the time,
Sure.
It's just like extremely expensive. And yeah, it's very, very hard to do that old story of like, I'm going to go out there and just work my way to the top. Okay. I hope you have a lot of money,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So, Aleksandra, we all want to know what Hans Zimmer is like.
Actually,
Oh.
Ksenija, if I could interrupt, I was going to really quickly, for maybe some of our younger listeners that don't know who Hans Zimmer is, I was just going to mention he's one of the most revered film composers of all time. He's worked on, I just looked at his IMDb page, and of course it has everything listed, but everything from The Simpsons to The Lion King to Wonder Woman to Pirates of the Caribbean to Finding Nemo. So I just, because we've been dropping that name, wanted to mention who actually Hans Zimmer is for the uninitiated. But yes, we were wondering what he's like and what it's like to work on the Hans Zimmer experience.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's a person very, very down to earth, amazingly creative, and it's extremely inspiring to work with him, to spend rehearsals with him, and somehow really a modest person. I mean, some people have maybe imagined that, people that are known are maybe behaving in a certain way, but I'm really, really glad that I have the opportunity to work with him and to get him known personally, and that he has also somehow become a mentor of mine in a way.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the remote sessions? So stuff that we can do even when we can't tour and we can't go on these amazing experiences of playing for people live. What does a remote session look like, actually, for, again, as Ben said, the uninitiated?
Yeah, the remote sessions normally looks like that you get as, again, very short term. I mean, at least according to my experience, I don't know, maybe some people have more time, but for example, in my case, I get the email and they asked me, hey, Aleksandra, here is the package. You have audio, you have MIDI, you have score, you have click track, and do you have time? Are you willing to do that? And we would need it delivered like within 3 days back. And then you say yes or no, or whatever. If you need some extra space to do it, it's also possible to solve it, but I prefer not to extend the date of delivery. And then what is necessary to have equipment for recording, you need audio interface, you need microphone, you need cable for microphone, and you need a program in which you're going to record yourself. So a couple of them, like really simple one to use, it's already GarageBand. Now I cannot promise that you can do a high quality audio recordings. Maybe it is, I haven't tried. I was doing just some songs for fun and it worked great. But other than that, I'm using Logic Pro as my program. It's called DAW. You can also use Pro Tools. There are different possibilities, but somehow I went with this because I also spoke to colleagues of mine, and simply that's the advice that I've got. And after that, nothing. You press record, you check the score, and that's it.
I would say, I guess they have someone like level everything, and like I guess like how professional do you have to submit it? You know, like is somebody gonna EQ out the air conditioner that's on, or is somebody, like if you record too low, like are they gonna bump up your volume? And so I guess someone else does all that, right? They stitch it all together.
Yeah, of course. You're not obliged to be a sound engineer. You're just obliged to deliver a recording in a good audio quality. I had a really funny experience because it was my first remote session, like for Hollywood production. I got asked, I was super excited and super nervous because I had no idea how to use interface, nor mics, nor anything, but I really wanted to do it. I mean, I had an idea how, of course. I looked some videos and tested it out, but somehow I jumped into cold water, basically. And because I didn't know how to position the mics over marimba, I was trying out, and then I hear it separately from left and right, and I don't want marimba to sound like this. So then I was just pressing some things around, and I'm like, oh, great, now it sounds really balanced. Like I hear it the same from left and right side of my headphones. And nothing, I was recording like really like 3 days, whole day long, you know. And finally I'm exporting the files, the audios, and sending them. And after 2 days I get an answer. Hey, Aleksandra, could you please do the next recording with stereo, because you recorded everything in mono, and like we would really need like the stereo. And I was thinking, oh my God, like what is, I wanted really just to disappear, you know. It was so terrible. I really messed it up. But anyhow, they are really professional, so they can sort these things out. I mean, so my first
still
fail,
accepted them.
I survived it. I mean, but it was really, I mean, really, I don't know. For me, it was extremely embarrassing. But I'm glad that they had understanding for that. So that it worked out. So yeah, if anybody's recording marimba, please do it stereo. You have 2 channels, so be sure that you are recording with channel 1 and channel 2 in whatever program you're doing it.
So, and they still accepted it in mono though, right? Like they were able to make it sound stereo. They didn't have to redo it. Yeah. That's cool. Well,
because I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. We've just talked on the show off and on about like how much of this do we need to teach in school, and I've always been an advocate of like, no, just like dive in, jump into cold water like you said, and you'll figure it out. And then other people are very vocal about like, oh no, we need to have like a huge curriculum on this because it's so important nowadays. And I'm just an advocate for like, no, just like you'll figure it out. And I'm glad you told us your story because you did figure it out.
Well, I think that, you know, of course it's nice to record yourself and to be able to record yourself, but not everybody is a type who likes to explore and do this. You know, somebody just wants to practice and play and maybe are not so interested in these things. So I think I don't know, it's nice to be prepared, but once it's there, it's not, you'll manage. Like it's not complicated.
It's not complicated. Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. And you know, probably if you did take a course, it probably did tell you, I'm not talking to any one of you here, but to our listeners, perhaps some of you did take a course, and perhaps at the beginning of the course, someone said, you must record in stereo, not in mono. But unless you like do this crash and burn on your own, you might lose that. It might just evaporate from your head, and then you go back and you make the mistake, and then they say, hey, could you please change it the next time around? And then you're like, okay, now I definitely know. So some things are better to learn when you feel them on your own skin, definitely, than to like read them in a textbook. It doesn't work as well as we'd like it to. Awesome. So why don't you tell us about the equipment and the space that, if we had a student and someone really wants to start doing this, well, can they do it in their bedroom? And what can they do to help themselves before they can go out and spend millions of dollars on a fancy studio?
Yeah, of course. I really, I support more the way of saving on a budget, because you can get a really good equipment on a lower budget. And you don't need, I don't know, a spaceship to record in there. I recorded the first things really from my home. It was a room. At that point, you realize actually how much the sounds can be disturbing. I had this microwave that was buzzing, but I was never noticing it until the point that I actually started making the recordings. And then, you have to struggle with these additional things because you don't know. It's not about turning it off. I cannot plug it out because something is blocked. It's just then you spend, I don't know how much time to solve this issue. So in any case, it's very possible to do it in your room. Just take care that there is not much noise coming from outside. I know that I would take like my mattress from bed and just put it on windows to dampen the sound from outside a little bit. Or I had these huge marimba bags and would put them in the corners around, to pick up the bass a bit more, that it's not that there is not so much reverb. If you have two mics, a computer program, interface, I think I said everything, and the instrument, of course, I think you're good to go.
Speaking of muting everything, is that something they want? Do they want it dry? Like they want nothing reverberant because they want to add it themselves, right?
Exactly, because you have really, really a lot of possibilities when you are editing. When somebody's editing the sounds, and how is this merging into this whole picture of all instruments and this symphonic sound. So you are really supposed to send it as dry as possible.
So stereo, high quality, dry.
Yeah, Aleksandra, I was wondering, we spoke with Emil Richards a few years ago, who unfortunately passed away in 2019, but is a Hollywood recording legend, and he had some really interesting insight on how many takes they were now doing. And he said it used to be you would do one take, and he said the first take was always the best one. Maybe you would plug some things for another take, but that was it. And he said now they do just hundreds of takes. And so with the virtual thing, I was wondering, how many takes do you end up with? How many iterations of revisions do they send you? And what does that process look like?
Well, I have two different experiences, because my experience of recording in the actual studio with an orchestra, or just, being in the synchron stage where I was mostly recording, you have there a conductor, bar counter, audio engineers. You're really, really somehow supported from all the sides. And there normally it goes very, very fast. It's not like 1, 2, 3 takes. If the take is good, then we just make one for safety, just to have two. But I've never experienced that we were doing more than 3 or 4 takes. Now, when I'm alone, then I have to be the person who is playing and setting it up and listening to it. So then I'm being really, really, really picky. And I don't know, I really have to listen carefully if I hear some noise, if the stick clicked, if I moved and scratched the marimba bar. I'm really being very, very precise about that. And I don't know, it depends what am I playing, but the good thing about it is that I'm always on my own, so I'm not having it remotely, like that they are at the same time on the other side and that we are doing it over Zoom or however. Like I get the material, I record it, I send it, and in case there is something to record additionally or any kind of information or additional takes that I should take, then I get the feedback. So somehow I try to do the best that I can, and I don't know, it depends how challenging the part is. I mean, it can be one take, it can be, I mean, although in case if I have one, then I'd still do the second one for safety and pick the better one. But if it's something challenging, like fast notes, fast tempo, and you see the score for the first time, then it can go and go.
Yeah, I was just going to mention for the uninitiated. I mean, it sounds like, oh, you can do as many takes as you need, so like you can get it perfect. So this is easy. Like anyone can do this until you do it, and then at that point, it's like you realize you hear every little tick. And I've done a few little like nothing like a Hans Zimmer score, but a couple like little multi-track recordings for friends, and like playing a chimes part, and you're just like, yeah, I just have to like lay down a few quarter notes on chimes, and then you're like, no, like, but the G, I didn't like my beating spot, or like the C was just ever so slightly late. Like, let me do that one again. It's so hard to record at that level. Like it sounds like it should be so easy, but it's so not.
Well, it's really not easy. It's fun, but you really have to be so concentrated. And like when I'm in the studio on my own, I just start working and I just work, and then my first break is maybe after, I don't know, 2.5 hours or 3 hours, and then I noticed actually how much I already invested the energy and everything. Then I feel that I should take a break, but still it's very different. Like if you're with the orchestra and there's this take and this bar counter and click is running and your heart is beating like crazy, because you should really do your best, and you shouldn't be the one because of who they are taking this and recording it again, like it's really it's a huge responsibility, I think.
I was going to say, on that same Emil Richards episode that Ben mentioned, he talked about how things have changed, and you used to talk to the composer the most. And now, like the producer or the director or the 5 producers involved, they're in the studio room. Of course, this is a live setting with like a full orchestra. And he went on this beautiful rant about how horrible he thought that was, and how, 30 years ago, it would have been like, get out of here. You're the director. You're the producer. This is about the composer's vision. And it sounds like, you get the material, you get the click track, and it's pretty clear what you need to do. But is there any back and forth with the composer? Is there any back and forth with the producer or the director? Or I'm guessing all those decisions are kind of like already made before they send that material out to you?
Of course, the score that is sent and delivered is kind of the material that you should record. But there can be suggestions from composers mostly, just to do it a bit differently, or to change some note here and there in this specific take or something. So you have to be also open for that you should just, rewrite the music a bit and be able to play it on the spot. But it's simply how it works. And I think that's also the charming thing about it, that it's not, okay, it's like that, and now we are not doing anything else. And I really like it because now, since I'm recording in my studio, they're really open for artistic input that you have. Like in case if you think that something might work better in terms of sticking or whatever, sometimes our 4-mallet technique doesn't really work with everything, with all the chords that you have to maybe play. And I mean, I've always sensed really, really positive response from their side in those terms.
Another thing that you mentioned when we had the conversation, and I want you to talk about it here, is that you sometimes might receive not a score. You might not receive a nice looking score. What happens then?
Yeah, exactly. Because this music is really like being like you're really getting the fresh material. So sometimes there is simply no time yet to put everything into a program which would write score. So then I just get the MIDI file and I get the instructions, what am I supposed to record? And in the MIDI file, you already have the marimba or vibraphone or whatever you have to play. So you can actually read the score from the MIDI file, the music, which is not precisely written. It's always a bit like shaky, but since you have audio and click, it's really not a problem. I mean, once I also got like piano score, but they told me like where in MIDI to search for that. So it can be a bit exciting also in that way, you know. Yeah, but that's really not complicated. I mean, you really literally just click into a MIDI file and on the track that you're supposed to record and you have it.
Yeah, for those who don't know, right, whenever you're working in a DAW and you're seeing MIDI information, you can click and change the view and see it sort of as sheet music view, except that it's usually, it looks really, really clunky. So it might be a bit trickier to read. That's why you gotta be fast with your thinker with all this music. So we were talking about equipment and you told us about your bedroom studio situation. Now, how have you upgraded now that you've moved into a real studio, and how much has that cost you? What should people expect?
Oh, well, I really don't know how much it cost me, because again, in that studio, I'm lucky to have already the room constructed, room construction it's called. So there is like additional dampening for the noises outside, and also like me playing is not so hearable outside as well. I put on my walls, I have panels that are like made out of foam, and they are very, I don't know, affordable. I think, I don't remember how many do you get in one package, but it's like 80 euros maybe for the whole package. Am I allowed to talk in numbers?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And you get like 10 of them. So I needed just one package to put around in my studio, and I got additional 2 bass absorbers, but you can also build them yourself. Now, I didn't have the patience to do that. I don't know exactly how, but you can really search in the internet and you can build them yourself. I mean, even on the walls, you can mount some things. It should be just like catching these additional frequencies and making it dry as possible. Then just interface that I'm using is actually this one, Focusrite.
Oh yeah.
It has 2 channels, you see, and it's, I think, around 200 euros or 250 euros. I'm not sure. So yeah, I've tried also more expensive ones, like that really the professionals are using, that Pharrell is using, and which is again like, I don't know, 700 euros, for example. But then I compared and I just decided to stay with Focusrite, because for me at this point now it works, and I preferred maybe to invest more in microphones. So I didn't go for the I don't know, cheapest possibility, which I don't know now which would be, but the microphones that I'm recording, for example, marimba with, are called AKG, and C214 is the model. They're really great. They are around, I don't know, I think you get a pair of mics for 500 euros or almost 600 euros. I'm not sure exactly. There is the better version of those mics, which is AKG C414, but if you're starting out, I wouldn't go for that because you don't know how long do you want to stick in that if you want to. So I would just really go for these ones like C414 are really like being used. I know that in like recording studios in Synchron Stage where I've been recording, like they are using them there. So for your personal use, I would really stick to that. And also what is really cool, like when I'm recording tom-toms, I mean, I'm happy to have the support from SE Electronics. That's like a younger company for microphones. I don't have the microphone here, but they're really practical for mounting them. Like on tom-toms, you can mount each separately. They're small, also affordable. I don't know the price exactly, but they're called V-Kick, and that's for the kick drum. It's a V-Pack.
Actually, I have a 414, and it's great, but I haven't been able to compare it to the 212 myself. But I hear everything out there using the 212s, and I think, yeah, that sounds like my 414. Just a theory I have. I'm not basing this off any evidence but my own suspicion. Like the 414 is a really old microphone.
Mm-hmm.
It goes way back, just like the old SM57, the Shure SM57. I feel like companies like they keep the old one the same way, but production is more expensive to make it the old way. But they update like the same mic but with new technology, and that makes it a lot cheaper to produce. And AKG, I tend to use a lot of AKG stuff. It seems like you can see that in the series. It's like, okay, the 414 is like the old historic one, and it's great. It's been updated too, but it's probably so expensive because of it has that old build quality to it. And then the 212 is like the newer version, and it's only cheaper because it's just new technology. That's just kind of my suspicion because they sound so much alike.
Well, I tried out both and compared both because I was searching for something that I was recording for myself, like with which ones would I go. I think at the end, it's really your personal taste and your personal decision. Like, what do you feel or hear yourself somehow? What is closer to you, to your ears, simply? So I went still with 214. Although I had the possibility to record with 414. Simply it resonated better with me. Maybe I already got used to them, but it resonates better for the sound imagination of marimba that I have, or at least the sound that I would like to hear on marimba. So I think it's also very individual.
And I think that speaks to your experience and your artistry, because we hear people say that all the time, like, well, you should use a mallet that suits you or that you like, and to really young folks, they're like, they don't know yet. They're like, I don't know, is that good? Like, I just hit this with this. Is that what good sound is? You know, like it takes experience and training and time to even get an opinion, you know?
Exactly.
Well said, but I like your conspiracy theory about how they work, Cangelosi. I think
it's deep. Yeah, someone's AKG is gonna shut us up, you know, take us off the air.
Yeah. Well, Aleksandra, I'd also love to know how does one get paid for international work? I mean, I feel like folks in the US, which I think are most of our listeners, they get a lot of work. And there's so much land here, and you get to work with people who live 4 hours away by plane, and it's still getting paid is really easy. But what happens when you're in Vienna and you want to get paid from Hollywood? Like, how does that work?
Well, this works in a way simple. Like I just have to, because it's US, Europe. So I'm really not a specialist about taxes. So I'll just give some kind of a simple version. So the payment itself, it's not complicated at all. I just have to give my bank data like IBAN and BIC or SWIFT codes, which I had problem once with a transaction because the BIC code was different if I'm getting transactions from the United States. but I didn't know that. I called the bank. They told me, no, you should use the same one that you have on your card. I went to the bank. They again told me, no, you should use the same one. But I said, but I keep getting the mails that they can't transfer me the money with this code. And then after I tried 3 times to ask some other people, people who are working in the bank, then they found out that actually it's a different Swift code. So those are these tiny things that you don't pay attention or you simply don't know, but then you'll find them out. And then in the terms of taxes, in Austria, I don't know how exactly it works, but definitely I don't know how it works exactly, but it's also not a big deal, because in Austria, then your whole amount that you receive is being taxed accordingly, I think, to your Austrian income, but based on your general income. I don't know the exact percentages because I just give it to my accountant. Because here as a freelancer, I don't know, probably in the States as well, but you have to have an accountant who is doing these things for you, because I think alone I would be really, I don't think that you're allowed even to do it on your own here.
I just had one that from Bulgaria, a payment from Bulgaria, and from our podcast, actually, Ksenija. Yeah, that's right. I did a little Zoom class for them, and it's like we don't have a IBC number, but we have a Swift code. And she was thinking, oh, you got to have this number. That's what they said, and like whatever. Like it always seems to work out. You just follow the instructions. Don't let that turn you off from this kind of work, I guess I would say to the young folks.
Yeah. Although, isn't it that in States you're getting paid mostly, or that it's really common with checks or paper checks? How are they called?
Yeah, we do that a lot.
Yeah, because I got asked, but I simply couldn't do it that way in Europe. So that's why the transaction took much, much longer than it would take if I would be maybe in the States or have the possibility to do it with checks. But these are just the little things that might delay your payment, but it's not such a big deal.
Is there not a history with checks in Europe?
I really don't.
There is. It's just it's really, really complicated, especially if you're getting a check from another country in a foreign currency. Like, for example, I recently, which I thought was incredible, I got a check from Hong Kong from some like leftover taxes from a couple of years ago, and I got the check to the US, delivered to the US, because I no longer have an account in a Hong Kong bank. And I went to Chase, which is this huge bank, my bank, and they said that they can't cash that check because they don't have Hong Kong in their like economy map. Mm-hmm. Hong Kong, like that's the economic, like the center of economy in Asia, and Hong Kong dollars don't pop up on there. So they had to go through a special thing where I had to leave all this stuff with them and then wait for weeks. Literally, I think I had to wait for 6 weeks for this money to be deposited to my account, because they had to go through a bunch of stuff, and they charged me a nice like 10% fee to be able to cash that money. So it can be really tricky. And yes, you'll definitely bump into some of these roadblocks, but just, keep insisting. Whatever the person tells you who's paying you, just go to the bank and be like, well, they said this. How do we interpret this? Help me, help me, help me. And you'll get the money eventually. But you'll have to learn. It's different, like whatever country you're getting the money from, whatever country you're in, it's like, it's a whole spiel. But don't do this.
So you're saying it's a good idea. You're saying it's a good idea to go to the bank and like make a big stink and pound your fist on the counter. Should you threaten them? Is it a good idea to make a threat to people at the bank?
Always the best of ideas.
Okay.
Always, because then they work faster.
See, that's how it works where we come. No, just be really nice, of course, and accommodating, and just keep asking, well, how can we do this? Well, please help, and it'll work out. Okay.
Hey, is it tacky? I mean, it's definitely tacky, but just tell us if you don't want to answer it. I'd love to know, like, how much you make for one of these sessions. Like, I know a lot of young people are probably listening, thinking like, okay, like, can I make how much of my living can I make doing this, or could I make my whole living doing it?
You're asking me if you can live out of sessions?
Yeah, like what's kind of the range of money you can make on
I don't know.
sessions?
I think it really depends. When are you starting? Where are you starting? Probably it is possible to live just out of recording sessions if you bring them, or if you are active enough, or if you're simply getting enough offers to live only of that. But then it's also the question if that's enough for you. So I don't know. I mean, I started with 30 euros an hour in the earlier days, which I think also, like, when you're starting out, you shouldn't be like maybe too, you're starting out, you also have to like learn how does this work.
It's just so neat, like understanding the tech of it all, like what you've told us about. Hey, you get your packet, you get your click track. Here's the equipment you use. I mean, it's like the equipment you described is like the same equipment a lot of students and myself were like making for YouTube videos, and it's like a lot of people have that already. And if you can do it remotely, what a cool thing to try to get into. Even if you're just starting out. And yeah, if you can play some triangle on a film score and make $30 an hour, that's or 30 euros an hour, even better. Like that's probably worth looking into.
Yeah, for sure. But it's what I want to say, that doesn't matter now if film music or contemporary music or whatever music, I really advise that everybody should be somehow open for everything. Because I mean, 10 years ago, I really didn't know that I would be working in film. It really came across to me and I accepted it. And I'm very, very happy that I'm working in it. So I would just really suggest to be open for everything, because it can really open your horizons in a completely different direction. And that the standard things, either you have to get into the orchestra or you have to start teaching, on whatever level, like that's the only possibility as your job, or as I don't know, after you're finished with your studies.
Well, Aleksandra, as we move toward wrap here, we had a couple of questions from social media we wanted to make sure we got to. We had an Instagram question from Grisha Osipov. He says, say hello from Grisha Osipov. Ask her how the pandemic changed her percussion routine and gigs.
I know Grisha very, very, very well. I played with him. So hi, Grisha. Yeah, well, pandemic affected my concert performance a lot. Like I really, really performed much, much less. But one door closes, another one opens up. That's the time where I really got the remote sessions. And I'm really, really thankful to get the opportunity and possibility to do that. So I was basically mostly being in my studio and, working on some things. I will also announce soon, hopefully, the video that I've been working on and made arrangement, and I cannot tell you yet what, but stay tuned, because I hope it will be really come out soon. So I did the whole arrangement. I recorded everything. I didn't produce it, but or I didn't mix it sound wise, but yeah, that was like some kind of creative work that I was doing. And yeah, I don't know, trying to enjoy in the possible moments that you've got being home and in the studio. I mean, I have really a good position of the apartment and studio. It's like 10 minutes away, so I can really jump there whenever I want.
Okay, so we had a social media question on Instagram from Ken Sultani, cellist. What's your favorite film score?
My favorite film score, I would say, there are many. Inception, or Lion King, or maybe The Incredibles is also amazing film score. Yeah, I don't know. I would put that as top 3, let's say.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Aleksandra, for being with us and for sharing. This was excellent introduction to young folks on what they should be on the lookout for when wanting to work in film music.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm very, very happy to meet you all here virtually, and I hope that we can meet at some point very soon somewhere.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Ben. Carly, we miss you. We'll see you next time. And everybody, we'll see you on episode 294 of the podcast. Bye.
Later.
Bye.
Oh.